Hi, welcome to the Pastor and Postmaster podcast. What you wanted to hear in the sermon, but you didn't.
Where the Academy meets every day.
Hi.
And every day, well, we have a full house today. We have a good friend of mine, and Kyla's in particular.
Local hero.
And a
That's
new
right.
friend for me.
And someone that has a connection with Maine, Randall Chastain. Hi, Randall.
How you guys doing?
We're doing well.
Yeah.
We're so glad that you've joined us. And, we didn't cover a lot of what we're going to talk about before, so this is going to have the feel of a natural conversation, which is what the podcast is supposed to be anyway, right?
Yep.
So, Randall, tell us a little bit about yourself, just before we get into the details, just what you do.
Yeah. So, my name is Randall. I've been in ministry for, 17 years 17 years I've been in ministry full time, and I've got 2 kids at home and a wife that I love so much, and a ton of animals, and just crazy little bit of life living under God's authority, and I love
Awesome.
it.
He's a really good cook.
Yes.
Nice.
Well,
So much.
you guys think so?
Oh my gosh. Yes, he's a very
He
good
came over to our house on Memorial Day, and he had a big container that's about a gallon, and I thought it was ice cream, and it was lard. It was tallow, actually.
That's
Nice.
so
It was one of the nicest gifts.
I rub
someone's gotten
tallow
me.
all over my face every day.
Well, if you know Ryan, he likes to bake apple pies, so
I owe him some pie crust.
Lard is good for that.
So that the tallow is good for a flaky crust?
It is, yeah.
Mm.
Or pork lard too, yeah.
Really?
This guy has a great. I've been learning and trying and humbly taking the things that he recommends that I do. But really want to get. I mean, a lot of people listen to this podcast do enjoy the testimony part of it, which we do too. And Randall, just of course I know it. I know Kyla knows good parts of it, but Bo is definitely going to learn. And I love the main connections. The main connections. But tell us a little about the story, because that story of how you were converted, how you came to know Jesus Christ, is such a neat story. So tell us.
So I have a long history of abuse in my life, both physical and drug and alcohol related. And I was in Vermont at the time. I lost a really good friend to an overdose, and I had never gone to church. Only time I'd really gone to church was at the local Catholic church for the soup kitchen every Tuesday and Thursday, because I grew up poor in Vermont, actually, at the time. And I lost a good friend of mine when I was 21, 22, and to an overdose. And I went hiking up this little mountain in Vermont by myself in a snowstorm. And I remember falling to my knees and begging God to answer a prayer. Like, God, if you're real. I remember screaming with the top of my lungs, God, if you're real, show yourself to me. I don't understand why you took my friend. And a few weeks went by, and I was working, and this guy asked me if I wanted to go help him clear the Appalachian Trail in Vermont. And because he was part of a committee that did Appalachian Trail work. And I'm like, sure, let's do that, So we scheduled a time to go out there. And I remember we're about a mile into the hike, and I just remember looking at him, Dave, what's your take on God? And he looked at me and started weeping. And he said, Randall, I've been praying for you for months.
Wow.
And let me tell you about Jesus. And then, right then and there, I gave my heart to the Lord on the Appalachian Trail. And my feet hit the ground, and I haven't stopped running.
Nice.
I slow down at times, but I'm always moving forward towards Him. God has just paved a path for me that I never in a million years would have thought I'd be. I'm in ministry. I don't do it for money. I do it for reliance on Him. And that's kind of in a nutshell my testimony. I mean, He's given me 2 beautiful daughters. He's given me a wonderful wife that we've been married for almost 18 years, and a home that I never in a million years could have imagined I had, and just a life that I feel really fulfilled in because of His provision.
And what was the story behind the pastor that led you to Christ, the guy that led you to Christ, like him praying for you for that specific period of time?
I mean, we worked together. I worked actually at the time I was in it was called CNS Wholesale Grocers. There actually used to be one. There might still be in Sacramento. but I was in Vermont at the time. It was like a super grocery store where you fill pallets and load semi trucks, and it was a really good, actually high paying job. And this guy joined our team, and he was a nice guy, and he just knew I was a hiker. I don't know anything about why or how he was praying for me, but God led it on his heart to pray for me. And after that hike, we left at like 5:30 in the morning, and we didn't get back till like 8 at night. We did
In the wintertime,
we did
too.
a lot of, no, this was actually in the
Okay.
spring. But we went back to the local firehouse in Newfane, Vermont, and there was a little Bible study, and his Pastor Ron, he told me to say a prayer. He said to me, the prayer doesn't save you. Believing in the prayer does.
Amen.
And I gave my heart to the Lord.
And you were
And
24 at the
I was
time?
23.
23.
Yep.
Wow.
You know that like Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine have like some of the highest, lowest percentage of people who go to church like in a yearly basis. So it's like, if you're going to be a pastor out in Vermont, Bo, you could probably confirm this. You're pretty committed.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ryan, I think it was 1995, I became a Christian in like 1972. And in 1995, at a church in Ellsworth, Maine, was the first time I met a young man who was about 16 years old, and he didn't know who Jesus was.
16 years old in America.
Yeah, and he knew that you cussed and said his name. He knew that, he'd heard the name or the word, but he literally had no knowledge of what that was all about.
And that's more common today statistically, but not back then though.
Well, when I came back home, I remember telling my friends, I said, after living in New England, in Maine, specifically for 3 years, I said, I've seen the future, and we're about 15 years away, and it's not good. Because people were openly hostile. It was the first place where, there was always hostility, but people getting in my face, when I was working at the post office at the counter, people coming in because they saw me or knew that I went to the Baptist church up the road.
I was one of those hostile people when I was younger. And matter of fact, when I went back to Maine to visit my mom and my family, and it was a Sunday, so we went to the local church, and I saw my English teacher there. And I actually, when I was a sophomore in high school, I ended my English year with a 36% because I refused to read Bible stories for him.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I refused to read Bible stories, and I told him that I apologized to him for the way that I acted and shared that I had given my life to Christ, and that man embraced me in a way that I just never imagined. Like, it was a really sweet moment, actually.
Oh my gosh.
So what prompted you to, was it like a set of circumstances that led you had touched on it briefly, but was there anything you wanted to share about? So like what led you to being that desperate, or?
I think just losing a friend in overdose,
Okay, yeah.
And I don't know why I cried out to the Lord. It's not like I went to church. I never, just not something I was into, but
Interesting.
I was in a really dark spot, and the Lord saved me.
Had you heard about Jesus like a whole lot before?
No, not really. There was a moment when I was a adolescent that I remember this guy taking like the troubled kids or the poor kids for summer. We would go, he taught me how to kayak, and a couple other kids to kayak, to rock climb, to fly fish, all the stuff he did. And he prayed before we ate meals. That's all I really remember of growing up and not having Christ.
And Randall, how once you came to Christ, I know you became a part of that church, right?
In
Vermont.
In Vermont, yeah.
In Vermont.
Yep.
And did you talk to your family members and your friends about this?
Well, I was engaged at the time to somebody other than my wife, my current wife, and she didn't quite understand because I had instant conviction. And so we were living together, and I moved my room out of her room. I quit doing drugs. Like, she was a drug dealer, and that's what brought us together. And so I quit drugs, I quit drinking, I quit smoking, and she was just like kind of left in the dust, and she didn't quite understand. And then there was a lot of hurt with my family because I grew up in a really abusive home. And so a little while went by, and I actually forgave my mom for allowing the terrible things that happened to me, and that really it really changed the relationship I had with my mom in a positive way. And so, I mean, we have a great relationship now. So, there was just a lot. There's a lot there. Like, I wish I had it in me to write a book about my life, because I'd love to share the story of Jesus.
Do it
through my life.
Yeah.
Well, maybe this podcast will be kind of a prompting or kind of precipitate that, that you can do that. And yeah, that's amazing. So I want to say this too, like, so once you became a Christian, you're 23, already an adult, and this is before you meet Paige, your wife. So what was your experience then? And this would be, Bo, where you guys can maybe converge a little bit with, like, what is it like to do ministry? We'll just assume evangelical Christian in New England.
I mean, I'll say my experience, it's hard. New England is a very dark place.
When we showed up in '93, I met a friend who's become a lifelong friend and brother, really great. And a mutual friend introduced us, and we started hanging out. And I think it was about a month after we got there. And I came out of Mormonism, and I witnessed to people in the cults, and I'd done research and stuff. And we were just hanging out one day. He was telling me what black flies were and all that kind of stuff, and getting me ready for that. And he just said, just right out of the blue, he goes, "So, Bo, is it dark here?" And I said, "Yeah, it is." Because at the time I was a trainer, so by that time I'd already traveled around a bit. I'd go out to islands, or I'd go to different places, and I had a real sense of darkness.
Yeah, it is. It's a very dark place. I mean, it's winter 7 months out of the year.
Yeah, it's literally dark.
Like depression is a real thing, and
absolutely.
We always kind of joke that, like, drugs are a hobby in Maine, because it really is a depressed place.
Mm-hmm.
It's so beautiful, but if you live there, it's hard. I mean, it's doing ministry in New England. I mean, even after I got married and started going to college, my wife and I had a really hard time finding a church that followed Scripture. There's a lot of perversion in the churches out there. Yeah,
I would like to add, though, that I had thoughts about, when we moved back to California, I had thoughts about how you could, how Christians here could go to Maine and do ministry in revitalizing little churches. Because I'd run into a lot of Christians who were at churches of maybe 20 or 30 people. And the term they would use is, we're looking for a young man to come take up the work.
Right.
Right? And they didn't have a sense like it could be homegrown or anything. Yeah. And I thought, no, these brothers and sisters just need to be encouraged, But like I said, I came back and told my friends, I've seen the future like 15 years from now. Well, I really lacked the faith, or didn't think that it was possible, but now there's like a revival going on in Maine.
Yeah. Mm.
And so now I'm hoping I'm seeing the future 15 years ahead for here back in Maine.
That would be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Randall, I remember my dad telling me, we would do these little practice testimonies for going to mission trips. What was your life before Christ, your life when you met Christ, and now your life now after Christ? So what was it like? I mean, tell me everything was perfect, it went well, and tell me that you were rich, and please tell me these lies.
That is the opposite of the truth. So I was engaged, and I actually ended up inviting my fiance at the time. We invited Paige. I met Paige, my wife, and a Mormon friend of mine at Target, working at Target. And we invited them over for dinner because I became friends with them. And my fiance at the time, when they left, told me, "You're going to marry that woman." one day. And
Not your typical love story.
it was probably 2 weeks later, I actually moved out and lived on a park bench in the summertime,
Dang.
like for probably 2-3 weeks.
You must have saw some stuff out there. Man.
Because I wanted to follow the Lord. And I didn't know that until later, but he was really just imprinting a life, projecting a life in my mind, like giving me a vision of what he was going to do. So I moved out of a bad situation into what people might seem as a worse situation. But my friend Paige and her roommate Ruth invited me to live in their basement for a period of time, to which I got to experience God in a whole nother way, because I'd never been surrounded by Christians before. And then I ended up going to college as a high school dropout. I ended up going to college at Johnson & Wales University for culinary school. And how I got in there, I have no idea. As a high school dropout, I had a scholarship for the first 6 months of my schooling, and God just paved the way. And I talked a little bit about the perversion of churches out there, and it was really hard to find one, because you go to a Baptist church out there and it'd be lesbian or gay preachers.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to find a spot, or they're teaching not truth, like false doctrine, or it was really hard to find a place to fit in. And this is where the story takes a turn. So I'm in college, and Paige looks at me. We're married. We get married in February of 2008. Mm-hmm. I'm in school. She's working at a private, like, Christian school, making dirt money. I'm a full-time student trying to get by, like, with my grades, so I'm not working. We have no money. And God provides in various ways. Really poor, living in Massachusetts at the time, actually.
Expensive place.
And so this is kind of a funny part. We had no heat, no hot water in the middle of winter in New England.
Okay.
So every morning, I would heat water on the stove and give my wife a bath, like let my wife have a bath. And I would use the leftover water to bathe myself. And then I would wash laundry in the bathtub and hang it around our apartment, which would take in the wintertime, a day or two to dry with no heat. And so she ended up getting a job shortly after we were married, maybe a month or two after we were married, making like $80,000 a year. She left her job and got a really good job being a vocational teacher. And a week after she got that job, she looked at me and she goes, "Randall, we need to go. I want to go into ministry." So this is where like God really worked. So I ended up leaving school after the first year. My wife quit her job, and it was June, and we moved to Florida to do full-time ministry at an at-risk boys' home run by Pentecostal church.
So you decided to get into ministry, and so you just eased in with a real easy. Ministry, right?
So we wanted to go into ministry where she was a teacher and I was a food service manager, because that's what I have a passion for. Food's been my ministry for forever. And so she got us this job. We applied, we got it. They moved us down there, and it was a nightmare. And it was spiritual steroids for me. I had to really rely on Christ to get us through. And so we found a good church down there that we watched grow from 300 people, and in a year and a half it grew to over 3,500 people.
This is in Florida, right?
This is in Florida, yeah.
That is crazy fast growth.
In Claremont, Florida.
Was it still a Pentecostal group?
Or? We didn't go to Pentecostal church, but it was run by the ministry was run by Pentecostal. Okay. And then just through a series of events, like, that ministry ended up getting shut down because terrible things happened to the kids that were not our responsibility. But God, this is another part of the testimony, though. God really protected us, because there was lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. And the board of directors actually offered me a job. They gave us a house to live in, a 3-bedroom, 2-car garage, gated community house. Offered me a job at a different facility called Bridges of America in Orlando, and protected us from ever having to go to court. Every single person in that ministry had to go to court, but my wife and I.
Wow, that is
that's
tragic.
crazy.
They did do that.
And that those court so that was in 2008, 2009, and those court dates lasted until about 2016.
7 years.
And we were called by a lawyer and said, you guys are protected. If anybody calls you, don't say a word.
Wow.
And so,
Oh man, I didn't know that part. Randall, during speaking of being a part of Pentecostal ministry, one of the obviously, the strengths I believe a strength is just the prayers of faith, and I mean I've used a story in a sermon with your permission, I think. So tell us about the prayer for provision.
the meat.
About
the meat.
I just called the meat prayer.
So when I was in college living in Massachusetts, I was eating some of the best food you could ever produce in the world. I mean, that's what culinary school is. They give you an experience you may never have in your life. In the meantime, we're so poor. My wife's literally eating saltine crackers and mustard. Mm-hmm. And I can't bring anything home. And if I come home and talk about my experience, she's crying like I'm starving. And so I ended up actually about halfway through my first year of college, I got a job at Ruby Tuesdays. And within a week, I became a kitchen manager. And our general manager, so the rule is like, if the packaged steak or the packaged fish that you take out and grill, if the date is today, at the end of the night you throw it away.
Wow.
That's their policy. But we prayed for meat to fill our freezer. My wife was just craving protein, and so the general manager, I went to throw all the food away, and he's like, "No, I want you to take this home. From now on, take this home."
Wow.
And our freezer had ribeyes, New York strips, salmon, all the fish, all the stuff. But the story doesn't stop there. When our freezer gets remotely low on meat, somebody shows up with food. Much so that I have to share with other people because I don't have the room for food.
Were they people from church or just every stranger?
Random people.
Oh, wow.
I was at Camp Alta working one day, and this guy shows up, and he's like, "Hey, I shot 20 ducks, and I don't have enough room in my freezer. Do you want them?" Like, out of nowhere.
This was in the future in Alta where
yeah, this is like later,
lived. Okay.
and so
the meat's still coming.
It's still coming.
Wow.
I mean, people get the benefits of it because I love to share. I can't give
experienced
away
that.
enough.
Yeah,
We've experienced that personally.
I mean,
Yes.
I had half a cow given to me like a year ago. My freezer was getting low, and somebody's like, "Hey, I have a cow.
Meat magnet.
I have a cow."
Mm-hmm.
It's like, "Hey, it's butchered and everything. Do you want it?" It's like, oh.
Honestly, if I hadn't experienced some of it myself from him, I would think it was kind of exaggerated. It is not exaggerated.
Yeah.
It's
you
really God has really done that for you.
He does, and it's just part of our testimony.
Well, I mean, maybe we could titch back a little bit, maybe just circle back about how ministry is in New England, and then just how it was coming from Maine to California. What was different, or what was the same?
Well, I think the transition from New England to Florida, where I experienced different churches, to coming to California, I was really protected in California because I knew the church I was coming to.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, you
And-
did? Oh,
and
because
so-
your wife was
Yeah.
probably, because her and her friend Ruth are from here, right? And they had
Correct.
gone out there,
Correct.
I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Okay.
I met them in New Hampshire.
Oh, cool.
But so I came out here really protected. I knew I'd visited the church a couple times. I was comfortable. I knew the doctrine, I knew what they were teaching, and so I was really protected. It was kind of in the early years of me feeling like I'm wandering in the wilderness, not knowing what I was really looking for. But when I came out here, Florida was spiritual steroids for me. I had to really seek and trust the Lord. It was really hard and challenging. And me being a new believer and my wife being a believer for many years, I had this expectation of me from her peers that I couldn't live up to. And Florida gave me that confidence, the way the Lord worked in our life. And so when I came out here, it was really like a breath of fresh air, honestly. And that's how I ended up in ministry out here, was God's provision again.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a statement. You can contradict it or whatever, but
Yeah.
there's it's like any place else out here. People are disenchanted with the local fellowship that they're part of. They want to leave, go to another one, start a new church or whatever. But it's been my experience as a Christian in California, first in Southern California and up here. This is like Christian Disneyland. Like in Nevada County, you know, if I meet somebody and they say, well, I'm from a Assemblies of God background, or I'm from a Baptist background, or whatever background, I'm an Episcopalian even, you know, I can direct them to a couple good churches.
So many.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
And
churches.
in New England, in Maine, it was not like that at all. It was very difficult.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
to all you folks who think you've got it really bad out here,
Seriously, and I think that that's created by some kind of a vacuum effect. Maybe everybody thinks of how awful and evil California is. In fact, it's an anomaly to have people move to California, so that's kind of a crazy thing. But you know, you'll find here that the ones left over, I think, a lot of people who are remnants of the Great Exit. I've noticed that they are some of the strongest Christians I've ever met. I mean, so that's just a cool side note, but
Yeah.
that's great. And we know the church that you're talking. And it's a great church.
yeah,
Wonderful.
it is
at a
great.
camp,
Wonderful.
you're meeting Christians from all over, right?
Oh,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So you got into camp when you got here. That was kind
So it was interesting because on my move out from Florida, my mother-in-law was really worried about, you know, finding work I live in Alta, which is, you know, it's a small town up in the mountains.
Yeah.
super historical though.
It
Metropolis.
is. It is.
Yeah.
But, you know,
400 people.
how am I going to get a job, you know, living there, you know? And on the drive out, I have a friend who talked me up so much to the owner of the Monte Vista Inn that he hired me while I was on the road. So I became
That's
one of the
great.
chefs at the Monte Vista Inn in Dutch
Dude,
Flat.
come on.
Oh,
And
that's
There's some
amazing.
famous people that eat
I like
there.
their French fries.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
Some famous people.
and I worked there as one of the head chefs for, you know, 2.5, 3 years when a pastor of mine at the time told me about Camp Alta having an open position for food service manager. I was really reluctant to apply because I felt really burned from ministry, but through prayer and some counsel, God led me to apply, and after a 3-month process, I got hired in December of 2012 to be the food service manager at Camp Alta.
Wow.
And I'd never experienced Christian camping in my life, and I don't want to do anything else.
Oh, nice.
I just don't want to do anything else in my life.
And that's a job that, you know, just the approach to ministry. Like, what's the big picture? Because I know obviously camp ministry has been declining across the country, partly for economic reasons. Like, for instance, our denomination had a place called Glorieta, the retreat center in New Mexico, and they couldn't keep affording it. A lot of these church camps will be sold to churches that are wealthy. But tell me, like, what's hard about it, and what's the pitch for it? Why care?
Well, I think a big part of like sustainability is flexibility. You know, I mean, we do have some groups that aren't believer groups. You know, we have recovery groups that come. Granted, their leaders are believers, but we have some high school groups that come up that, you know, again, their teachers are Christians, but the group as a whole isn't. We have, you know, you just have to be flexible to make that work. I think, you know, we went away from denominational back in the 90s.
It was just Southern Baptist.
It was
camp.
Southern Baptist, yeah. It was called, it used to be called Camp Out the Southern Baptist Assembly.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
And in the 90s, it remained that name for a long time. But in the 90s, we broke away from the denomination and the assembly and became kind of non-denominational and brought in a lot of different groups. So flexibility is important for sustainability, you know. Not compromising, but it's important to be flexible in Christian camping.
Because that's a temptation too, to compromise, where you kind of lose
Right.
the mission of.
Well, I looked on your website, or on the website of Camp Alta, and it does talk about gospel-centered. I mean, at least the camp. Maybe that's just the one part, but
Yeah.
I mean, it was great. I was like, oh, that sounds really, really safe.
Yeah, and it is. And most of our groups are Christian church groups, you know. As a matter of fact, in 1 week, we actually kick off our summer camp, and we're busy for 10 weeks straight every day.
Dang.
You know, it's crazy. 3 meals
Good
a
knowing
day.
ya.
Yeah,
That's
see
why-
ya. Peace out.
That's why we had to get you on here before it gets
Before it
too
gets
late
crazy.
in the summertime. I
Yeah,
know.
actually, Randall has been a long-awaited guest here since we do like to have testimonies, but it's been hard to get him because he's got a lot going on. But it's been a long-awaited one. Yeah.
And in that position, like you have, I mean, a lot of people like they go to you're going to William Jessup University and getting a degree in, is it pastoral ministry?
Christian leadership.
Christian leadership.
Working on a degree in Christian leadership with a focus on business.
So Jessup, are you doing the accelerated one that's at night with the?
I'm doing online.
Yeah.
And the big reason behind that is because I get a massive discount for online tuition.
Oh, okay.
As a person in full-time ministry, and so it really saves me.
Wow.
I mean,
My experience with Jessup is that they just really want to serve the body.
Yeah.
And make it not like you're going to get some second-rate Christian education,
right?
But they're going to make it compact, like you can get it done.
Right. Yeah. 7-week courses. Yeah. It's cram sessions.
And it's legit.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
His church attendance has been really spectacular.
Somebody down there, I know.
I'm curious. So at the time when you moved here, how was your guys' spiritual, I guess, your walk with the Lord? Did you just kind of jump right into ministry at your church and stuff?
Well, I tried to. I think I was so burned in ministry that I kind of went into a dark spot for a minute. I mean, I had a relapse moment while I was working at a restaurant, and that kind of woke me up, and it was easy for me to get taken away. We didn't have kids until 2012. We had our first daughter, and in February, and so it was easy for me to get lost in video games and really just isolate myself away. So to cover, I guess, the hurt that I had in ministry and working in a restaurant without Christ being the center, I mean, that's a really hard mission field, and I failed miserably at it. And yeah, I mean, I wish I could go back, but I can't. But God still grows me. That's why I said I can run towards him, but sometimes I slow down, and sometimes I'm crawling towards him, and that's just the truth.
You mentioned video games. I mean, you've honestly kind of helped me be a little bit more open towards them as a type of ministry.
Oh, by the way,
I
play with my friends.
Yeah, the way you play with your friends and are able to. I mean, I know someone that was actually, at least it was part of his conversion had to do with, a woman witnessing to him. So do you feel like video games can have an element that the discussions?
To be honest, I do, because I do have a group of friends that I play with, on occasion, and we have great fellowship and accountability for each other. I mean, they live across the country, and we still get to get together and hang out through that. But I don't want it to be like, I think we need to have a good balance between
it's difficult
between that and and reality, life.
Right.
Yeah.
It's easy for somebody like me to get encapsulated into that world, and it's
son, get off your Fortnite.
So, Randall, you mentioned about being main just about burnout specifically, and that's something that's discussed with anyone who serves in ministry. So tell us a little bit of, maybe if you can, the nature of what that was.
So the burnout came when I was in Florida. So we had a couple instances happen. We would work, as my wife was a teacher, I was the food service manager we had like 8 to 10, maybe 12 kids, plus staff, and I'd cook all day, my wife would teach all day, and then we would be the relief house parents as well. So 3 nights a week, we're spending overnights with these troubled kids. And there wasn't a whole lot of breathing room.
Right.
And in moments, there was a specific moment when we did finally, we'd gone like 2 months, 3 months, I think it was 3 months without a day off.
Man.
And we were making combined, we were making $19,000 a year, and so not that pay matters, but it does a little bit, but it didn't really, but like, so my wife and I, we went on a little adventure. It was kind of interesting because we always pray when we go on an adventure that God would give us a treasure. And so we found this old antique store, and we walked in there, and it was a mess. And there was some old lady working there, and we found this little Rich Mullins CD.
Oh yeah.
And so my wife is like, we got to buy it. So we bought it. It was like $1. And we got in the car and we put it in and we started listening to like, Our God is an Awesome God, right?
Yeah, that's his famous song.
And we get down the road and we're about halfway through the song just singing it. We get a call from our director. Hey, there's been a terrible accident. I need you to come back. And we hadn't booked a hotel. Like, we were just needing to get away for one night. And this kid decided, a 16-year-old kid, he wanted to light a bonfire, a huge one. And he used gasoline. And he ended up getting third-degree burn over his entire body. The house parents in that moment got fired. The house parents we had. This kid's in the hospital, and these other kids are like left with like, what the heck's going on? And so we went another like 2 months without a day off. And
another 2 months.
And then after through that whole hospital experience, these kids having that one kid gone, these other kids started coming forward with the stuff that kid had done to him. And so then that's how all the legal stuff started happening.
The kid that burned?
Yeah, he ended up previously, before he got burned, was assaulting these other kids. Oh wow! And so,
but it was an accident.
Oh no! I mean, the fire was an accident, but he was assaulting these other kids because the house parents were neglecting to care for the children at nighttime, and so we picked up the pieces as best as we could, and our director lost his job. My wife and I were able to keep it for a while until, like I said, they shut it down. But that's where the burnout comes from, is like, we left this really hard situation. And yeah, I was offered another job, but I had to leave. My schedule at the other job was an 1.5-hour drive. And my schedule was, for 2 weeks, I was 4 a.m. to noon. And then it would switch every 2 weeks to noon to 8 p.m.
Every 2 weeks.
It was a really rough schedule. So that was coming on the heels of the ministry that I was part of before. So that's how burnout happened for me. So when I came out here and I was at a restaurant, which is like kind of a comfort zone for me, the burnout, like when bringing up ministry, hey Randall, you should apply for this ministry job. It's like, whoa.
Right.
I don't want any part of that. Like, I've had my dose of ministry. I'm good. You know, but God had other plans.
Right. Well, Ryan has some experience with a little bit of burnout. I think we all probably have, being involved in ministry for so many years. Like, what did you have anything sort of that?
Yeah, I mean, I part of it is the pastor's a little bit different, at least because you kind of can self-regulate to some extent, at least in a small church. I think it's tough in like a really big one, but part of it is like, are you your own slave driver at some point? You know, I think as I was finishing my dissertation, I remember getting like some migraine things and other problems that I thought was going wrong with me, and it was just with the kids and everything. But definitely I had some good input from people to slow down and spend time with my wife, and so it's been helpful, and even people at this church have been really helpful about that. But never anything that was that brutal as that stretch, Randall.
That's crazy.
That is incredible for that much.
Well, I mean, God sustained us for sure. That's why I say it was spiritual steroids, because we really had to rely on the Lord to make it through that.
Wow.
How do you? Now what's your schedule like now? Do you feel like it's?
Yeah.
I have a great schedule now.
Do you guard against burnout, or?
Our director at Camp Alta does.
Cool.
He knows, like, our previous director was he pushed us to the max, to the point where like burnout was happening. And so when our current director took over in 2018, he wanted to make sure, like, in the summertime I was getting days off, because I wasn't getting days off in the summer. It was very sporadic, long hours. But he makes sure he protects us. Plus, I have really good like vacation time, so that's really helpful too.
That is nice.
I get 4 weeks a year off that I can compile into holiday pay, like holidays, and I can throw those in there too.
Podcast days. Yeah.
Podcast days.
What do you think, fellas? Like, how do you sort? Because it's a pervasive problem. It's almost a breeding ground for, like, honestly, like, maybe even some abuse to happen. And maybe not, like, intentional. But what do you say about what are some signs of that for people like me? Like, because I'm still in ministry. I'm 15 years strong. in my ministry at our church, and like I've seen my good friends, very good friends of mine, like eating out of like the church food pantry, for example, or whatever. And I'm like, this is not okay. Like, how do you guard against, like, are there signs and, you know, to watch out for? Like,
Well, for me, and Ryan even mentioned it, it's health. You'll notice things are happening health issues that
that's
you didn't
good,
have
yeah.
before,
Right.
you know, and
Your body speaks.
yeah, the body speaks. And because, you know, we're kind of conditioned to hey, we're going to rely on the Lord. And then we read history. We read about these people that did crazy things. And so, like, I subscribe to this whole, the people I was listening to and still agree with, I mean, is that you should give 100%, you know, for the Lord. And so I'd read people like Henry Martin, who was a missionary in Iran. I think he's the one that said, what is a candle but to burn? I think he said that. Or if I'm to burn, let me burn out for the Lord. You know, so, and you imbibe that, you affirm that and go, okay. And, but then, you know, it's almost self-inflicted if you're not paying attention. Because even,
It's a good way to put it.
yeah. And I think about, we were talking about Daniel Merrill and Jonathan Fisher. Let's bring it back to the book, right? But no, you know, so you have these ideas about people ministering in those days, and they didn't have much escape. But Ryan, remember Jonathan Fisher in his contract with the town, I think he got 6 weeks out of the year, right?
Yeah, you did.
And he would take these trips down to Boston and go meet his friends who owned a bookstore and stuff. So it's not a new concept to Sabbath or rest for.
Well, I mean, that's a commandment. I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
It's like you can burn out, but you also have a responsibility to follow the commandments.
Yes.
And Sabbath is a commandment.
Right.
It's kind of an irony that like churches, I mean, including ourselves, actually miss what's right before us. You know, the idea that you should rest, and yeah, it's paradoxically for churches. You know, if your pastor's like, oh, you're on, you know, Sunday, yeah, how can you possibly rest? So therefore, you never rest. So we try to make Mondays our rest day as much as possible.
I brought this up with people, and they're like, really? The church that I'm a member of now, I don't know who it was, about 15 years ago, I think. It was just put into our documents that the staff folks will have a Sabbath. You know, every 7 years they'll have like 3 months for education, and you know, and then the elders that serve and the deacons and deaconesses, they can serve 6 consecutive years, and they Sabbath 1 year. So somebody was thinking about this stuff.
They got 3 years off, 3 months off, no pay, but
No, it's paid.
yeah, you know, Randall, I was just thinking, you know, how, you know, what you do is service. I mean, you are doing evangelism. You are ministering to fellow workers. But, you know, typically when people if they're going to seminary or they're going to undergrad with a ministry degree, they're thinking, I'm going to be a missionary. I'm going to be a pastor. You know, I'm going to be a podcaster. Now, I'm going to write books. But many, I don't know many say, I'm going to cook.
Yeah.
I'm going to be in the service industry.
Yeah.
So, like...
Well, I don't want to do that forever.
Yes.
I've been in it for 26 years now.
Whoa,
And
that's
so
crazy.
I've been in food service for 26 years. And when I pursued this degree that I'm chasing after in Christian leadership with a focus on business, I want to get away from cooking and become a camp director.
Yes.
Camp ministry is like God made me for it, and I want to continue that journey.
And it looks like the Lord, you know, qualified you for that with that horrible experience
Totally.
you had in
Just
Florida.
thinking that. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, so those aren't wasted years.
Not
Not at all.
They're
And
not.
It's
They're
crazy.
not like it's not a mistake. It wasn't a mistake.
And my wife and I actually frequently revisit those moments because they were so pivotal in our faith as a new married couple. Matter of fact, like, kind of backtrack a little part of the story. When we left, when that place shut down, we ended up fostering 2 kids out of that into our home. And then one of them left, and the other one when we moved out here, he was ready to go back home with his mom in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And the other kid, he'd already left. We had him for maybe 6 months, and then he ended up living homeless in Elk Grove, California, from Florida, as a 19-year-old kid. And I found out, and we brought him into our home to help him get a license and a job, and Ben Rosenau hired him.
Oh.
And
Kyle's husband.
He worked for BBR Landscaping for several months before he took it upon himself to make poor choices and go do his own thing. But
Right.
But God brought that whole thing full circle back. So
Wow.
yeah.
Well, Randall, I think too. I mean, just kind of thinking of getting close to wrapping up here. Even how would you make the case for someone that is, thinking of serving ministry and say you should be a camp director or you should be consider serving in that area? Like, what would be the case you make? Because the unique one.
That's a good question. I mean, if a lot of people that go into camp ministry have experienced camp ministry in the past, and if it's something that is fond to you and it's a career that you choose, start somewhere. Like, go somewhere and apply, because camp ministry, I've learned so much, and we have interns that come for the summer, and they learn so much. They get to do administration work. They get to do kitchen work. They get to help with the pool. They get to do outside grounds work. They get to be a camp counselor, and they gain so much. And as a matter of fact, this year she just came back yesterday, a returning intern, who wanted to come back. She loved camp so much.
Yeah.
It's just such a diverse, unique experience that, I mean, if it's something somebody wants to do, I would encourage them to do it, because, I mean, you just learn so much. I never in a million years thought I'd be able to drive down the road with my kids on the tractor, and plow and do all the fun stuff. And
Are you guys resting now in your life? Do you find yourself feeling a little more, I mean, not that it's perfect, but do you guys find yourself in a more restful place these days?
Restful, yes. Complacent, no.
Good.
All right.
Awesome.
I think it's important to know the difference, because complacency is a dangerous place to be, and rest is a good place to be. And so I think our reliance on the Lord allows us to rest. Yeah. But our desire to be better for Him prevents us from being complacent.
That's great.
So
I think when we often think about, like, you're just your life for up to 40, 42 years. And
middle-aged.
Middle-aged.
Middle-aged,
As I say, past 36
I'll blur
officially.
it out.
That's right. Bleep that out. Edit that part out. But, there's a lot of people that have invested in you, just invested in me and Kyla, Bo here. I mean, so, everyone's contributing a small part. So even if you're someone who's like, I just am hearing about camp for the first time, maybe you could volunteer as a counselor at one of your local camps, or send your kids. I've done that. I was in camp, then I was camp counselor between college, and now I'm doing it when my kids are in it. So I imagine some of my kids want to be interns. So there's ways that you can have a soft entry.
And I mean, if for those that are local and are looking to get into camp ministry, I mean, obviously we're hired this summer. We're filled up with hiring, but if somebody wants to apply and be part of it, or has children that they think they would be interested in it, by all means, reach out.
We'll put that link down there.
Yeah. campelta.org, and there's lots of ways to serve in camp ministry.
Wow, what a great story.
Well, I think, man, got a good 50 minutes of this, so maybe we could. Anybody else have anything to add? Anything you have questions for us, or?
I don't really have any questions. I'm just really glad that you guys invited me to be part of this, and it was fun. It's a fun experience for me.
It's been nice having you. He's now at our church, which is really fun and cool. So it's been nice to see you guys grow, and just for anyone thinking it's fine, all is well.
Yeah. There's no hard feelings. It was a healthy transition.
Yes, and I'm really proud of them for that. And I think when there's moments like that where you come across difficult situations, I think all those moments of all those hard times that you had in Florida, and all of it is, like Bo said, none of it's wasted. And so we can use that. We can glean from the past how to deal in this certain situation. It's a good reminder for me to remember the grace God had back when in my life, and how to do people, how to do ministry, because there is the people part, right? And it's hard. So I'm really encouraged by having you there. And in fact, you're taking deacon training. Am I allowed to say? Okay. You're taking, he's doing deacon training, and you guys are all going up for a overnight.
Yeah, men's retreat.
Men's overnight.
Men's retreat.
So not jealous at all.
Yeah.
Not jealous, as the women are not invited.
Yep.
So
We'll have to go up and
We'll
sneak up
party.
and scare. No, we'll scare them.
yeah, let's do
Yeah.
it. Put my
We'll prank
Sasquatch.
'em.
Yeah.
My Sasquatch.
We're gonna prank
costume
you
on.
guys
Oh yeah, there you go.
when you
Good
least
luck getting
expect
there.
it.
Good luck getting there.
Oh no,
Yeah.
It's way out there, guys.
no, we know people.
Yeah.
Thanks, Randall. It's been fun.
It has been fun. Thank
Yeah,
you.
Randall. Well, thank you so much. And if you're viewing this and you have any questions for Randall or for us, just add them in the comment section.
Yeah.
And hopefully YouTube doesn't delete them. So I'm sure for camp they're okay.
Yeah.
They don't
we'll
violate
see.
community gatherings.
Thanks, guys.
Well, God bless. Thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I enjoyed being
Okay.
in the middle of the
Thanks for
couch.
having me.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Was it fun?
It was life.
Be sure and smash that like button.
Smash it. Bye.
Bye.